Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk in the southeast of Scotland. And Scotland is the capital of literally everything, including all dimensions, etc., etc. You get the joke by now, surely. But welcome anyway. I hope everybody has had a good first half of the week. I've had a great first half of the week. Weather-wise, it's been a little bit cooler than it has been of late, so it's not been quite so roastingly, ridiculously hot in here. It's almost been, last week was almost impossible to work in here, and doing my shows, actually, it was so hot in here. It was like over 40 degrees Celsius in here. However, right now it is not. It is 14 degrees outside, so it's still pretty mild, but in here it's still pretty hot. It's like 32 degrees, which is hotter than I would like it to be, but it is what it is. I do have windows open to try and let some cool air come in, but you know, I have a lot of gear on, and that just makes the room really, really hot. Plus, my personality heats up the room, obviously. So I hope everyone's all right. Who have we got? We got Billy Morgan, who is first in the door, as per normal, followed by Daryl Harrison. We got Ron, the key man here. We've got Brett Marler, who's asked a really good question. We've got Cal Traducia, we've got Matt Cochran here, we've got Just Bob, who has also messaged me a question, which I will be dealing with a little later on in the show, so stick around for that. And we've got Dwayne here, who has removed things that he's been saying, and we've got Tony Stringer here. He says, I'm from the middle of Earth. Okay, so you must be very hot. And we've got Lloyd. Good grief, Lloyd is here from Papa Rap to Music. Welcome back, my friend. I'm glad you're here. And of course, we got Dave, aka Bops from NY. He is here as well. He says, greetings from Hell's Porch. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've kind of like put your deck chair out first and you've got your towel on it before everybody else, right? I'm kidding. I'm teasing you, Dave. I've known Dave for a few years, so I think I can get away with teasing him at least a bit. Anyway, on to tonight's show. So, I don't know about you, but just lately, I have been thinking about and talking actually about to my kids about music that evokes an emotional response. And so I asked them, what songs make you cry? And you maybe you do know why they make you cry, but maybe you also don't know why they make you cry. And so I asked my kids that, and they thought for a second, and both of them mentioned the same song. But they also mentioned some other different songs as well. But the one that they said, that they both said, I had also thought about as well. And that is a song written by Randy Newman for Toy Story 2. And it's called When She Loved Me. And it is beautifully sung by Canadian pop singer by the name of Sarah McLachlan. It's a wonderful, wonderful song. It's beautifully written. The lyrics are, I mean, just reading the lyrics on their own without the music will make you cry. But it's the mixture of the context in which the song is performed in the film, as well as the fantastic melody that Randy has written. And it's one of those interesting songs where, you know, everybody thinks, hey, if you want to write something sad, write it in a minor key, you know. Write it in a minor key. That will be sad automatically. Well, When She Loved Me is not in a minor key, and yet the three of us, me, my son, and my daughter, share the same song in common that makes us cry. That particular song, because it's a fantastic. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you should be able to find it on YouTube, and it's brilliant. It's fantastically written. I think it's one of Randy's best songs of that type. He has written other songs like that. There is a song in the first Toy Story film called I Will Go Sailing No More, which Randy sings. And I think it's just as evocative and just as emotional as When She Loved Me. He seems to be particularly good at writing songs that really grab your emotions and can easily have you weeping like a baby. I think there's another one that does it for me, or at least it did. I don't know whether it still does. And it's Bright Eyes by John Denver from the Watership Down film. And it's another one of those songs that's very emotional, but it's in a major key as well. Just like When She Loved Me is also in a major key. But it's the lyrics, it's the backstory to the song, as well as we've watched the characters develop before we get into the song, that kind of, I think, probably helps. So there's character development, and then there's the there's the emotional song. So for me, I think it's those three songs, the two Randy Newman ones and Bright Eyes, does it for me every single time. Those three. I also think the score for Watership Down is great as well. Just, the whole score, not just the John Denver songs, but the actual whole score is really, really great as well. Ron has actually beat me to the punch here, and he's actually said here the finale of The Firebird by Stravinsky. And I wonder if he said that because he's saying, hey, that's one that gets me every time, that gets me emotional. So yeah, please do post in the chat if you have a song that makes you cry. Post it in there. Maybe, put in a short little line as to maybe why it makes you cry. And maybe see if you can identify musical elements of the song or the songwriting itself that you think maybe contributes to it. That might be an interesting little side discussion. So we're going to have this kind of little side discussion going on throughout the course of tonight's show, but I do have a couple of questions that we're going to deal with. So the first one I'm going to deal with because it's probably the easiest to answer, and this is Brett's question. He says, is it possible to change the tuning of an instrument in Notion? For example, a guitar or a bass? Yes, it is possible. In Notion 6, you're right, it is a little bit buried. Notion Mobile, not quite so buried. But I will show you where it is in Notion 6. And I'll show you how to get to it. So let's go and get Notion open. And let's go over here. Put my camera on. All right, so in Notion here, I've got a score with an acoustic guitar and an electric bass. I have them both in standard regular tuning at the moment. So let's say we want to change the acoustic guitar to drop D. So what we need to do is we need to go to this little hamburger thing here, which says score setup when you hover over it. And then we need to click on the little cogwheel here. And when we open this, it might open to the instrument tab, but you want to open it to the notation or tab. And then you've got these options here. So at the moment, we've got it showing the the traditional notation as well as the tablature. You can change it to excuse me. You can change it to show either or as well as both. So we've got it showing both just now. And here is the tuning. So we've got standard E, A, D, G, B, and E, standard tuning. But let's say we want to make this drop D. So let's change that to D2. Okay. And now it's set. We just hit on OK. Now let's maybe say we want to tune this E to B because we like a little bit of gent in our lives. So we'll do the same here. We will set this to B0. So I'm going to have to move the cursor across one, delete both of those, and we'll change that to B0. And just like that, that's all changed. And then we just exit the score setup. And so now when we enter notation, it should be and that of course is gonna of course not sound right. But now if I select this note and I release that note, now this should be on what would have been the E string, but it's now the D string. So now it should be an open D string here. And then we can do the same with the bass here. We can and there we have our nice little open B string there. So you can see how the tab number on this, what would be the E string, now a B string. And so I'm playing this open B here, and we've got the correct tab number of 0 here because it's an open string. So when you change the tab tunings, it immediately affects what goes into the tab here. And so you can actually put in whatever exotic tuning you want. Like if you want to do particular modal tuning, you can do that. You can enter whatever pitches you want your strings to be tuned to, and Notion will follow it. Now, here's a little caveat to think about, however, and that is that Notion will only play back what it has samples for in its sample library. So if there is a note for which it does not have a sample in its sample library, there will be no sound. Even if the note, ordinarily exists. For example, on trumpet, it basically uses, for the classical trumpet, it uses the standard trumpet range, which goes up to basically a C above the stave. Now, most good trumpet players can go up to a G above that. They would call that a super G. But if you choose the jazz trumpet, it does have a little bit more of an extended register. It'll go a little bit higher, but it's only a little bit. But most really good jazz trumpet players can go a whole octave above the stave, and some can even go an octave and a half or 2 octaves above the stave, which means, you can there are trumpet players out there like Joe Faddis, for example, or Arturo Sandoval, who can pretty much play dog whistle notes on a trumpet. If you were writing a chart for Arturo to play, and you want him to play some of that extreme high register stuff, in Notion, they won't play back because those samples don't exist in the Notion playback engine. They don't exist. They're not in the sample library. So you'll not get any sound. But if you give the chart to Arturo, he would be able to play those notes. So they may not exist in playback, but you can put them on the page and it'll still work out for you. Whilst we're in Notion, Ron says, in Notion, when using the 8VA designation, Does it include the dashed lines to define the desired section? I don't actually know. I would think it probably does. But like I said, I don't actually know. So let's just enter in a few notes here. And then let's go and we will find where those are. Where's my octaves? Okay, so if we're using octave up, we can select that tool here. We can click here. Oh, I thought I could click and drag. Hang on a second. Ah, yes, you can click and drag. There we go. So that did actually work. That worked a little better than I thought. So let's get rid of that. Let's select that. And let's get rid of that as well. And I'm going to do that again because I didn't do that very successfully. So let's try that again. Let's drag across. Now, when we're dragging across here, I am not holding the mouse button down. I'm just moving the mouse. And then I can click to release. And now those should play back up the octave. Which they do. And this little guitar and bass piece sounds somewhat dark. But as you can see, all the tab numbers are pretty much correct for being up the octave as well. So we could do the same for the bass, just for giggles. Let's go and stick our little octave thingy in there. And we'll release that. There, did you see the tab number changed? So the tab number is now 12. So let's play this back. All right, so it still sounds pretty dirty, but you get the idea. You basically grab this tool here, and by the way, there is an octave below as well, and then there's 2 octaves above, and then there's 2 octaves below as well. So you can grab these, and then you just basically swipe the mouse across without the mouse button pressed down, and then you click to release. But if you are also wanting to change the treble clef, or you want to do this whole octave thing on a semi-permanent basis, more than just a couple of bars, then I would use one of these. I would either change the clef, or I would use the clef up the octave, or the clef up 2 octaves, or treble clef octave below, or bass clef octave below. So what does this little symbol mean? So let's actually just drop this in here. So what does this mean? Well, it basically means this tells the musician that anything henceforth that you see here is to be played an octave above written, right? So you see actually the one you do see a little more commonplace, let's say, in a vocal score. For this is what you would see for tenor, for a tenor voice in an SATB score. You would see the treble clef with the figure 8 underneath. So what that means is we're writing this in treble clef to make it nice and easy to read, so everything is pretty much within the stave, but it should sound an octave below written, right? So this is how a tenor part in a vocal score would be written. You don't get this for cellos or things like that. Cellos have to be able to read treble clef, alto clef, tenor clef, and bass clef. They have to be familiar with all 4 clefs because of the range of the cello. So, because you basically don't want to be reading a lot of ledger lines when you are a cello player. And the same for viola players. Viola players need to be familiar with treble and alto clefs. Again, those alto and tenor clefs are designed to avoid ledger lines. So basically it moves where middle C is on the stave, basically. That's what those do. Yeah, because nobody wants ledger lines. Ledger lines are a pain in the butt because you have to figure out what the note is. You basically keep the whole space line thing going, but you're just kind of adding to the stave temporarily. That's what a ledger line does. And so, for example, the first ledger line above the stave here is going to be an A, and then the space above that, so if you put the note sitting on top of the ledger line, it would be a B, and then 2 ledger lines above will be a C, so the line goes through the middle of the note, and then the note above that second ledger line would be a D, right? So you have to count up, basically. You kind of learn how to do this over time with a bit of practice. You learn to recognize how many ledger lines it is, and you do very, very quick math in your head, and you know what the note is. But really, you want to avoid all of these nasty little ledger lines, so you don't have to sit here going, okay, so the first line there, that's a C, so the space there is a B, so that's an A, that's a G, that's an F, that's an E, so that's a D. Right, okay. Now, in this particular case, we know that we tuned the E down to a D, so yes, this is going to be a D. And the tablature number says 0, so that makes sense. But yeah, that's kind of what those do. All right, so that was a fun little detour into Notion. Just Bob says, wow, there could be a masterclass on notation. I could do, but I think my attendance would be very, very small. I have done a music theory basics course, which is on this channel, believe it or not. And so you can go and check that out if you want. I did try to sell it many, many years ago. Nobody bought it, even though a lot of people said, oh yes, I would totally buy a beginner's music theory course. Nobody did. So I just put it up on the channel for free. So you can go and find that playlist and watch all of that through if you so desire. And yes, I do go into Notion a little bit on that course. But yes, I could do an entire live stream show where we just do Notion. The problem with that is not everybody is a notation reader. And, you know, that's going to turn off a lot of my audience. They're not going to want to watch that. So that's why I guess I've never done it, because this show is meant to be Songwriting Simplified, not Songwriting Made More Complicated. Although maybe I should start up another show for, you know, rather than calling it Songwriting Simplified, I guess we call it Songwriting Extended. I don't know. But where we delve into maybe a little bit more complex music theory, maybe a little bit more context notation, and maybe a little bit more, you know, things like big band arranging, orchestration for an orchestra, orchestration for a string orchestra, orchestration for a wind band, a choir. We could, you know, I could cover all of that kind of stuff, but my audience for that would be even smaller than it is for Songwriting Simplified. And the Songwriting Simplified audience is very small. Not that I mind. I'm quite cool with having small audiences. It would just need to be made worthwhile, to be honest. Just Bob says, humans can't hear dog whistle before computer analyzing. How did they tune the whistle to pitch? That's very funny. Let's see. Tony Stringer says, I heard your voice is an homage for a dead friend on my YouTube under the name Second Tony. All right, cool. Okay, yeah, I'll check that out. Lloyd says, Foreplay Long Time by Boston. Not because of the lyrics, but because it is my favorite Boston song, which makes me very sad at the tragic loss of Brad Delp, the vocalist. Yeah, that would certainly evoke an emotional response. If you are listening to a vocalist sing it who is no longer with us, that would definitely do it for sure. Composers Unlimited. That's an interesting idea for the title, for sure. Just Bob says, I would pay for music I've written to be transcribed into Notion and correctly. That could be an interesting side project. Perhaps. Until you see my arranging fees, and then you might regret that. I say that with a chuckle, but the fees I charge for my arranging services and my transcription services are actually quite high. And the reason being is because arranging and transcribing takes it is a lot of work, and it takes up a lot of time, even with notation software. And notation software definitely does cut down the amount of time required for writing arrangements or doing transcriptions. It still takes a very long time. And as a result, my fees are quite high. And also because, I do a professional job when it comes to arranging. I write arrangements for bands, for big bands, for orchestras. I do all of that stuff. That's kind of like one of my side hustles that I have to make some extra cash. My day job, my regular day job at Presonus, pays pretty nicely, but for things like being able to go on vacation and things like that, that's what the arranging gigs and my session work does. That that pays for all that kind of stuff. But for sure, we could certainly talk about that, Bob, if you would like, offline. If you're interested in that, we could talk. For sure. All right. Let's maybe move away a little bit from Notion land. Notion is cool. I love Notion. Notion 6 is great. It's a little bit elderly now, but it's actually it's still, my opinion of it is that it still holds its own against some of the other composing tools out there. It really does still hold its own, in my opinion, even after all this time. All right, so Bob, your question. I need to change screens for this because I need to go over to Facebook because it is in Messenger that you wrote me this. Okay, so Bob's question is maybe a tad complicated, but maybe also not, because I think although the terminology that is used in this question can be a little difficult to understand, the concepts are actually fairly straightforward that I think anybody could use. And so the question is about non-functional harmony. All right, so what is non-functional harmony? Well, first of all, we've got to define what functional harmony is. What's functional harmony? Well, functional harmony is what you play in a regular pop song. That's functional harmony, where the harmony is designed to get you from one chord to the next chord, and it's all based around a tonal center, which most songs are. For example, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. All of that is functional harmony. This is home. This is our key center, also known as the tonic. And then we have chord 6, which in this case I'm playing as a dominant. I'm introducing the C sharp, which leads me to D minor, which is chord 2 in the key of C major, chord 5, which is the dominant, because there's the tension that wants to resolve down to the third of a C major chord. So all of that is functional harmony. The notes in the chord are leading to another chord diatonically. That means of the scale. Diatonically, it's a fancy little Greek term, and it just means of the scale, right? All based around the C major scale. This note, C sharp, doesn't belong. But what we're doing is we're temporarily going to the key of D minor for this D minor chord. chord 2, chord 5, chord 1. Now, I could keep that as a minor chord. I could keep 6 as a minor chord. And it would all do exactly the same thing. It's functional, okay? So non-functional harmony is the opposite of functional harmony. That's functional harmony. Non-functional harmony is chords that don't progress like that, okay? So, for example, there is non-functional harmony in... oh, darn it, what's the Stevie Wonder song? And then you get the... And then you get into the chorus to that song. The title will eventually come to me. So we've got a couple of non-functional chords here. They don't belong to the key at all. The key is B major. So the chords I'm talking about, we have B major, F minor 9, E major 7, C sharp minor, F sharp major. Those are the only functional parts of that whole progression. So basically we have chord 1, and then we have flat 5 minor, and then we have 4 major 7, and then we have 2 5 1. So the 2 5 1 bit, that's functional. The bit that's not functional is that F minor 9 chord, because it does not belong to the key of B major. It belongs to B flat minor, essentially. So it's being borrowed from a completely other key center. And it's not functioning diatonically in the same way that as a 2-5-1 does, right? It provides a little bit of color. It provides some chromaticism. Doesn't belong at all. Okay, so essentially what this little F minor is doing is it's providing a little bit of a passing chord to this chord 5. Now this chord 5 isn't regular either, because this chord 5 should be dominant, and it's not. It's major 7 instead. So there's a little bit of non-functional harmony going on there. So this little flat 5 chord, you could say it's essentially a tritonal substitution for chord 5 going into chord 1 in E major. You could say that. That's a convoluted way round of looking at it. Personally, for me, it's just a chromatic passing chord to the E major 7 chord. That's the best way to think of it. Why he chose it as F minor instead of F major, I don't know, because kind of functionally works just as well. So I think the reason why it's F minor is to accommodate the melody note, which I'm not obviously going to sing because I don't want to get any copyright strikes. But I think it's to accommodate the melody at that point. but it's nice. It's a nice piece of non-functional chromatic harmony that does resolve. It resolves down to that E major 7 really rather nicely. So what Bob's question is here is he wants me to talk about different instances of using non-functional harmony and why they work and where can they lead. Well, non-functional harmony can take you to a whole bunch of really, really interesting places. For example, one of the things I like to do is I like to do chords that are not functionally related, but they are related by root. For example, I like to do chords that are either a major third apart or a minor third apart. This is something I kind of started learning when I was at university, and I was studying the music of John Coltrane, and I was looking at his harmonic palette. And one of the things he liked to do was use either key centers or chord changes that were either a major or a minor third apart. And so you can either make them major 7 or you can make them dominant chords. It's kind of up to you what you want to do. But when you're making them a dominant chord, they're not going to a chord 1. They never resolve in the traditional sense of a dominant going to chord 1. 5, 1. This is like a dominant chord that never resolves. You know, they never resolve anywhere, but because they are related by a minor third or a major third, those ones were related by minor thirds. What they do is the voices, or, you know, the constituents that make up each chord, they move in a way that is very pleasing to the ear and sounds natural. Particularly if you're doing minor thirds. Major thirds, they sound a little more weird than the minor thirds. So let's do the minor thirds again. And I'm going to start with a C major. I'm going to do these as major 7th chords. So we've got C major 7 here, and then we're going to go down a minor third to A. That's a major 7 chord there, and then I'm going to go down again to G flat. And then I'm going to go down again to D. Now, none of those are functional. They don't lead anywhere, but they lead nicely into each other. And what we end up with is a nice little vamp that we can loop over and over again. So they work really well, and it's completely cyclical because they don't ever resolve anywhere. There's no tonic, there's no key center. So this is an example of minor thirds related chord changes. So let's try major ones. So starting on C, we're going to go down again, but this time to a major third, interval of a major third. So there's a major third right there. So that'll be A flat. Then we'll go down another major third. So this time it's going to be E. So I'm going to go. And then we'll go down again, but this will arrive us back at C again. So we'll be going. But with a different voicing, right? Okay. So what I could do is, because we end up with a little bit of a weak loop because we end up back on the C again, I could change that last chord into like a B major, which is not quite the thirds related thing. Or I could do a minor third related thing at the end. So, hang on a second, that was wrong. And then go back down. Sorry, wrong. Or it could be, you know, that last chord could be. So we're going down to the B with the flat 5. So I've made that a major 7 flat 5. So that's, again, a different kind of non-functional harmony that actually sounds pretty good. And you could just loop that, turn that into a vamp. And you get these kind of things in, you know, more dance-orientated, smoothish kind of jazz. You get those kind of chord changes happening quite a bit. Non-functional harmony. And so people like Stevie Wonder use non-functional harmony all the time. Another exponent in the pop world would be Bruce Hornsby. He uses non-functional harmony a lot as well, where there are thirds-related chords that crop up in his music as well. You just never hear it because it's so nice and subtle, and the voice leading is so subtle, but it's there. Okay. Bobby Booth is here. Hello, my friend. I'm glad you're here. Brett says shades of Vince Guaraldi. Yeah, kind of. Personally, for me, that's more kind of shades of Vince Mendoza than Vince Guaraldi, but maybe. Vince Mendoza, by the way, is one of my favorite arrangers of all time. Almost all time. Quincy Jones is still number one for me, followed by Henry Mancini, another wonderful arranger. Neil Hefti is another really great arranger. But yeah, Vince Mendoza writes some of the best arrangements. Gil Goldstein is a fabulous arranger. He did arrangements for Michael Brecker for his Quindectet record, which was released 22 years ago. It was 2003, I think it was. Which it's basically a rhythm section plus a bunch of orchestral instruments, woodwind and brass orchestral instruments. And the arrangements are freaking awesome. They really are. They are out of this world arrangements. The orchestrations are fabulous. Just beautiful arranging. So, Bob, I hope that kind of gave you a little hint of what you can do with non-functional harmony. I'm going to play one more little thing of non-functional harmony where I'm deriving chords from a scale. So it's a little bit more of a modal approach. But again, the chords are not functional. The chords are designed to just be a thing all onto their own. So they don't progress anywhere. They're not designed to. They're just designed to just be a sound all of their own. And you get this idea of chords being sounds of their own from 20th century composers like Debussy and Ravel of the French Impressionist school. and that whole idea of impressionism in art. You see that in impressionistic art. You see things being hinted at, suggested, rather than explicitly stated. And so Ravel and Debussy's music is exactly the same. The music is suggested, it is hinted at, but it is not explicitly stated. There's a lot that's left open to the listener's interpretation as to what this is. And so I'm going to play just a little bit of that. Accompanied by my phone farting at me at the end. There you go. So that's all non-functional harmony, all based around essentially a B Lydian scale, pretty much. That was all based around a B Lydian scale. There is such a lot you can do with modes for just creating chords that are just a sound. So you can do the same with Dorian mode as well. So you can do exactly the same with Dorian mode as you can do with a Lydian scale. And so you are essentially just creating chords out of the notes of the scale, and you just grab some notes and you find some little clusters, you find some dissonances, and then you're essentially contrasting consonance and dissonance, and that's it. There's no set chord progression. And so you can make some really, really, really interesting music by basically just taking chords, whether they are part of, you don't have to do modal music to make that kind of thing happen. You can take a chord you like the sound of and another chord you like the sound of and just move between those two chords. And that's your music. That's what makes your song move along. And they don't have to be related to each other. I mean, it could be, I don't know, just throwing out there, it could be a B major 7 and an A flat 7, A flat dominant chord. So, it could be, and you build something out of that, out of those two chords moving, and then you just revoice them and make them, dress them up a little bit to make them more interesting. But, they're not functional as in they don't go anywhere. They're not leading to another chord specifically. So we're not going to a tonic, a dominant, a mediant, a submediant. We're not doing any of that stuff. We're just making one chord move smoothly to another chord that's not necessarily related. Doesn't have to be. So you can do that stuff in any style of music. I did it in a vaguely neoclassical kind of way there, but you can do it in any style you want. I'm a jazz guy. I'm predominantly do that kind of thing in a jazz context, but you can do it in any context you like. If you're a folk kind of person, then you can do exactly that within the within the style that you work in. Thirds related chords might actually sound quite nice, quite good in a more kind of folksy kind of context. Maybe, with acoustic guitar, a violin, a flute, and a vocal, maybe you could create something really evocative. There's, the possibilities and the whole thing is completely limitless. It's only limited by your mind. It's only limited by what you think and what, what you understand. So what I have tried to do my entire life is reach for that thing that I don't yet understand or I don't yet fully hear. So that's been my goal musically, is to reach for those things that I don't yet fully grasp. Because for me, that's fun. That's where, being an explorer at heart, that's kind of what I like to do, is kind of reach for something that I don't quite fully grasp. I don't fully understand. I just hear it and I want to try and make it come out of my music. So for, things like modal harmony, non-functional, non-tonal harmony even, are little tools, little things that can help me get to where I'm going, get me where I want to go to musically. So I hope that this helps you. Bob has asked a fantastic question. It is a little complicated, but it can be applied very, very simply, and you don't have to use complicated chords to do it. You can do this with triads. You can do this with just regular, 3-note chords. That whole thirds related thing doesn't have to be major 7s. It can just be straight triads, there's a third related movement right there. So we've gone down a major 7, a major 7. We've gone down a major third to F major. And if we were to go down another major third, we go to C sharp, right? In the context of A. And then if we kept that going down in major thirds, we'd be back where we started. You could do that. Or and I just ended up on F over A there. That kind of worked rather amazingly. And that's B flat minor there. So that could work as well. You've got something that sounds really, really evocative. And none of those chords are functional. None of them are related to each other. But they work. They actually work really nicely. There's so much you could do just with these 4 chords. And then, of course, once you've got those nice 4 chords, you can transpose the whole thing anywhere you like for a little bit of contrast. So that was based around an A key center. You could move that up to a B flat, or you can move that up to B if you want to, just to create a sense of rising tension. Just use those same 4 chords, the same 4 intervals, and just move that around. And you could create an entire piece of music just based around those 4 chords that you just shift about. So, you know, A, F, C sharp, B flat minor. And then you could shift that up a whole tone. I have to think about where I'm going here. And then C minor. E flat major, C minor, B, G, E flat, C minor, and then you could go back to the A. What is making all of those chords sound so good together is the voice leading, right? So what we have is we have root position A major. Then I'm going first inversion F major, A, C, F, D flat major, second inversion A flat, C, D flat, F, B flat minor, root position. So much you can do, because now all of a sudden, not only have you created this really nice set of chord changes, but because the chords are not related together, you've got a whole bunch of other notes related to each of those chords. And, you know, they're either a step or a half step away from each of those chords that you can use to join a bunch of notes together to make melody. And the melody practically writes itself. Just use the chord tones, add some passing notes. Done. You've got yourself a melody. Just like that. All right. So there we go. Bob says, I try to grasp hold of what is beyond my realm only to land where I cannot explain. Precisely, and very poetically put. That is the end of the show. We will leave it on that awesome little sentence. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me, and thank you for the great, great questions and the great, great talking points. This has been a fantastic show. It's been really, really great. I could have kept going for another hour, but I won't. And especially on the whole thing of non-functional harmony, I live and breathe that stuff. That's kind of my heartbeat, is non-functional harmony. And not only what you can do with non-functional harmony, but what it then opens up in terms of melody, counter melody, improvisation. It's a whole other world that you can explore, and it just doesn't end. It's completely endless. It's completely ceaseless. Go have some fun with it. Go make some music in whatever style it is that your music is, whether it's rock, whether it's folk, whether it's jazz, whether it's pop, whether it's R&B, whether it's hip hop. I don't care. Make some music. Use some of these ideas that we talked about tonight. And release your music. Get your music out there. Put it up on SoundCloud. Put it up Bandcamp, somewhere, anywhere where people can hear your music. Get your music out there. All right, folks, that's it. Thank you very much. Good night. And Neil, yes, you are late. No, dearie dear.